Good afternoon. It's 3:15, so we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Wendy Hardwick. I am an MTSS specialist with the SPDEG grant here at the Department of Education. I want to welcome
Wendy, I think you froze on us.
Wednesday. Oh, am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
All right. The last Wednesday of every month at 3:15. Today, I'd like to introduce John Potter. He's a senior technical assistant consultant at AIR and the Targeted and Intensive Technical Assistance Co-Coordinator for NCII. He also provides technical assistance around the implementation of MTSS through the MTSS Center at AIR and the Wyoming MTSS Center. Dr. Potter has extensive experience in database decision making, problem
Wendy? Oh, she must have froze again.
decision making. Oh,
You- Wait, are you back, Wendy?
all right. I'm just going to go ahead and get us started. Dr. Potter.
All right. Yeah, these are always a bit of a wild card. You never know if the tech's going to work for you. Um, but yeah, I'm excited to be here with you all today. I know we got a short amount of time, but I'll kind of present some content. And if you have questions, feel free to throw those in the chat. I'll kind of monitor that, but we should have time at the end as well for questions. So I will go ahead and get us started. So today we're going to talk mainly about like teaming, teaming at systems level implementation. So what's the makeup of teams, and kind of what should teams be responsible for in the implementing MTSS and other initiatives as well. So I won't go into detail. That's kind of my background. Wendy shared a lot of that. So um, I've done a lot of work and had a lot of opportunity to work with a wide range of school districts, both within Oregon and across the country, implementing multi-tiered systems and intensive interventions for students that really need them. Primarily around early literacy, but also, done work around behavior support, middle school literacy, high school literacy, math, some other pieces as well. But a lot of what I talk about and a lot of my expertise comes from those experiences. And I think, doing the work across Oregon, I worked in Oregon for 13 years as a statewide coach. And our project had an opportunity to work with over 100 school districts, both big and small, across the state. And so obviously, like when you work with districts in different locations, different sizes, different student populations, MTSS in general, it looks different. It's not the same. And for example, we work with the second largest district in Oregon, which was 44 elementary schools, more urban, suburban. We also work with the smallest school district in Oregon, which was actually only 2 students in the entire district. It was a small ranching community. So multi-tiered systems is going to look different. So as I talk about today about teaming, I think the teaming processes in terms of like what a leadership team does and what it looks like is similar across those contexts, but I always like to give a caveat of, a multi-tiered system in general, you need to fit to the context of your particular school. All right. So obviously we're talking about teaming, and we know that teaming is kind of essential for really anything that you want to do in education. Multi-tiered systems of support. It is a team-based sport. Like you cannot do this on your own. And we joke about this sometimes with my colleagues. We talk about, I'm a teacher and I'm doing MTSS. Kids go to the MTSS room during MTSS time to get MTSS. It's like that's not really what it is. It's a system that encapsulates all your kids all the time, all your staff. And so we need a team to really lead this effort to make sure that this happens well. And so as we think about the approach we take to rolling this out and sustaining this work, oftentimes we see different kind of approaches taken and different results as a result of those different approaches. And so as I talk through these kind of examples here, I want you to think about, like, in your experience, what have you experienced both as a leader and as maybe within the school under other leaders? What does the team-based leadership look like? And so this is all from implementation research, implementation science research. But the idea is one of these approaches generally happens whenever we roll out or try to do anything in schools. And so the first approach that we talk about is this idea, it's called letting it happen. And unfortunately, we see this a lot in schools, and we've all kind of either been guilty of like leading something in this way or being a part of something. And that's where, like, whatever it is, a policy, a program. So for today, we could call that MTSS. We adopt it, we want to do it, but we provide minimal supports to our teachers to actually implement it and translate general information into what it looks like in practice. And we hold our teachers accountable for if it works or not. And so we blame them when it doesn't work, which often it doesn't work because we're not supporting it in an active way. And so we want something to happen, but we can't just leave it at letting it happen. And so more like appropriate or a better approach would be this idea of helping it happen. And so this is when same policy or program, we're going to mandate it, we're going to adopt materials to do it. We have training resources, we have websites to support practitioners, all of those things. But in the end, we leave practitioners it up to them on how to figure out what it actually looks like for them and how to solve problems. And I'll use an example of this. I worked in a district where they're rolling out a early literacy intervention, a really good one. And what they did was they rolled out the materials, they did a little training, and then they gave teachers access to YouTube videos, good YouTube videos of teachers teaching this so they could see what it looked like in practice. And that's great to have those videos, but there's no follow-up coaching. There's no discussion of what it looked like in their classrooms. Because it always, like, when you watch videos or you see it somewhere, like, it looks a little bit different than when you try to do it in your own classroom. And so you need someone to help translate that. And so helping it happen is better than letting it happen. But ideally, we want to do this last one, which we refer to as kind of making it happen. So that's when we have a leadership team that implements this policy or procedure. And we hold ourselves accountable for making sure that we have the implementation support, the systems, and we help our teachers actually overcome barriers to make sure it's going to work. And so we provide coaching, we provide support. We don't just like give teachers materials and expect that they're going to do it. We relentlessly come back to it and we train, we support, we see how it's going, and we have commitment to doing it over the long term. And so we want to look at team-based leadership that is going to be more on the line of this making it happen. And so we think about considerations for like how we make it happen. Leadership teams that do that think about a few different things. I'm going to talk about three kind of overarching kind of ideas or areas that we want to attend to. And the first is this idea of alignment. Whatever we're trying to implement, so in this case, we're talking about MTSS, we want to make sure that it aligns really well with what you're currently doing. How does it fit within your vision, within your mission, within your existing structures? So we'll talk about alignment. We're going to talk about this idea of internal capacity. So do you have the ability with your leadership team to scale up and support this work without the ongoing support of outside agencies? And so agencies like ours, National Center of Intensive Intervention, MTSS Center, we provide a lot of technical assistance. And I think to some extent, like you're always going to look for outside folks to support the work that you're doing. But in essence, like you have to develop the capacity to do this work on your own. I always say, like, you can't rent this work, you have to own it. Like you have to know that this is our work, we're going to push it forward rather than, oh, when our consultant comes in or our trainer comes in, they're going to give the message to our staff so we don't have to. We got to own this work and make it ours. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about is this idea of just implementation. So how do we actively support people with implementing this work? Because we can align it to what we're doing. We can make sure we develop the capacity, but in the end, like we have to implement it. And all of you already know, like implementation is tricky. It never really looks the way that you want it to. And so how do we respond to implementation challenges as a leadership team? All right, so I'm going to touch on some kind of key points for all three of these. So I want to start with this idea of alignment. And alignment starts with really getting the right people together to do this work. It really starts with having a solid team that is aligned and has a vision that is all, we're all pulling in the same direction. And so we think about your key personnel. like think about those people that are making decisions around MTSS, and you want to have some key people kind of in the room on that team. And so including people that have the authority to actually make decisions, allocate resources within your team, and a way to communicate. And so the next slide, I want you to think about like who is on your leadership teams or who should be on your leadership teams. And so what we talk about in just like general kind of guidance is you want a manageable size leadership team. We say 3 to 8 is about the sweet spot. I've seen larger districts. For example, our district had 44 elementary schools. They had a leadership team of like 20, 30 people. It's really hard to get things done when you've got that many people in the room. And so you may have a steering committee that gives input on some things, but ideally you want a smaller group of people that are really digging in to the work. And so about 3 to 8 people, and you want some diverse and representative roles, skills, and viewpoints. And so I'm going to share with you some of those roles, skill, and viewpoints that you ideally want on your team. And so the first is, I touched on this, you need someone with authority. Authority to allocate resources, set policy. There's no greater frustrating feeling, and I'm sure we've all sat in meetings before where we've made all these great decisions about what we want to do, we want to roll out, and whoever signs the checks or sets the policy, sets the procedures is not in the room, and we don't actually have any ability to do the things that we wanted to do. So we need someone in the room to do that, whether that's a superintendent, curriculum director, whoever it is, someone needs to be able to approve things. We also want expertise in a few different things. You want expertise in instruction and curriculum, as well as expertise in how to use data. So you want a data person, you want someone that really knows instruction and curriculum, because at its core, multi-tiered systems of support is a framework for how we provide instruction and supports to students using data. So we need some people that really understand instruction and understand data use pretty well. We also want practitioner experience. And so I've also sat on a lot of leadership teams that were a lot of district level people and not a whole lot of teacher representative support of people who are actually going to be the ones implementing on the ground level. This is crucial because we can make all the decisions in the world, but if it's not something that can be implemented, it's not feasible, it's going to be challenging. And so you want to think about your people that you have in your schools that are practitioners that can help say, hey, this is something that we're going to be able to do, or, we're going to run into some problems if we're going to try to implement this thing. You want someone with implementation experience, so someone that's been through the fire of trying to implement something. It's not enough to like want something to work. We all know that we've tried to implement things. There's ups, downs, challenges. There's feelings. Like we want someone that can kind of grapple with all those things and understands how to implement. Which goes into the next one is really you want to have someone with adaptive skills for managing difficult situations. And so this is like the people side of change, right? Like we can't just mandate things to happen, even if they are great evidence-based practices. We're working with people. And so you want someone on your team that really understands that and understands like when to push people, when to pull back. The great leaders that I've worked with have this skill that they know, like they keep their staff, like they know how far to push them before like we got to pull back a little bit and prioritize, our people. Ideally, you want someone highly respected by staff. So, who are your champions that staff are really going to listen to, the voices that you have on your team? And then, as much as possible, representation of family and community voice. We want to do this work with our families and communities, not for our families and communities. And so how can we bring in that voice to make sure that we're developing systems that are going to be friendly and appropriate and meet the needs of our families instead of like, doing this to our families and then hoping that they will like approve of it later. And so as you look at these roles, what I would caution you is that this doesn't mean because you see 8 things up here that you need 8 people with all like you need a resource person, an instruction person, a data person, a practitioner. What you need is people that span all of these skills. And so you may have someone that knows instruction and curriculum. They also know data and they're a practitioner. You've got all of those represented. You don't need a unique person for each of these. You just need people that kind of fill all of these spots. So I want you to think about these, and maybe just in the chat here real quick. Think about maybe just answering that second question up there. So I want you to think about what roles you typically include on your leadership teams. Maybe in the chat there, just put what roles are missing. Maybe currently missing, have been missing in the past, but what roles do you see up there that maybe we haven't done as good a job including in our leadership teams when we make decisions? So I'll give you just like a minute if you want to go ahead and throw that in the chat. Yeah, representation of family community, something we haven't done as good a job of. Yeah. Middle and high school teachers, yes. It looks different in middle and high school. So sometimes we build systems, elementary systems, and just try and put them on middle and high school. They don't fit exactly. So how do we get that involved? Teachers, family communities. Yep. Implementation experience. Yep. That's an important one. Yeah, so all of these, just the idea is like consider who is on your team and make sure that you have the right people at the table. Another one that I thought was a brilliant move. I worked with the district that on their MTSS leadership team, they made sure to include the teacher union rep, because they wanted to make sure that the decisions they're making about like when they're going to meet and how much instruction time, like that the union was involved in that up front, because they had problems in the past with making agreements and then the union pushes back on it. And I know like teachers unions are different from school to school, very much so. So maybe that's not someone that you need to include up front, but I think the idea is just creatively thinking about like making sure all the right people are at the table. So we're including all the voices that we're going to need to include. All right. So first step is getting the right people in the room. And then we also need to think about the fit. Like, how does this MTSS fit within your existing structures? And so I want you to consider like, what are you currently doing? What's coming up in the future? Considering language, like sometimes we roll out like dual like initiatives or dual things that are actually the same thing, but we call them something different. And I'll share an example of that in a little bit. And then how we kind of just organize and structure things is going to be important. And so you want to think about like, where does MTSS fit within your district? And so, we have a lot of silos in districts. We have like maybe your English language arts department, you have an assessment department, behavior support, school improvement, instructional coaching. And these are all like connected in some way, some ways that we know, some ways that we don't. And so the idea is like, where does MTSS kind of fit and live in this kind of broader context? And so I have, maybe it's an unpopular opinion, but when I think about like silos, I don't necessarily think silos in and of themselves are bad. I definitely think we have too many like departments that we can consolidate, but I don't think we need to be experts at everything. I still think we need some like instructional or expertise in different areas. So we need some silos. So it's not the silos that are bad, it's the fact that the silos don't talk to each other or coordinate or communicate. And so I'm not saying like your assessment department doesn't need to be intimately involved or knowledgeable about special education regulations. Your instructional coaches don't need to necessarily know everything about like, your English learners. You need experts in different areas, but you want to think about how all these things connect. And don't underestimate just the idea of like where things are in terms of physical space in your district or in your buildings. I'll use the example I worked for when we were doing this statewide coaching. We moved into a regional support district because we changed where we were housed for a little bit. And where they housed us physically in that building was in the same office with the outdoor school, with a couple other departments that we really had no overlap with. Who they didn't put us next to was the regional MTSS team. And so we were doing statewide MTSS work, and we weren't sitting near the MTSS team. And so whenever I wanted to communicate and kind of work with them, I had to get up, walk across the office, and see if they were there. Rather than being able to just kind of lean over and kind of have incidental conversations because we're physically located right next to each other. So don't underestimate like how you actually put things, put people in space, because a lot of work that happens through these unintended, just kind of incidental conversations that happen. All right, so think about where it fits. Also think about like what comes off the plate. You know, we often talk about like MTSS is a series of practices and procedures, and we're layering on top things. But at some point, like teachers' plates get full, their toolbox gets full, and they can't do anything else. And so thinking about like how do we get rid of things that we no longer need or that we no longer want? And so are there practices within MTSS that can replace or refine existing practices? I remember specifically going to a school to coach. We had talked about like these tier 3 meetings where we individually looked at individual students on a more deeper level, and we called them DBI meetings, database individualization meetings. And we trained them. We had the school work on them, and I came back like a few months later and I asked, "Well, how's this going? How are your DBI meetings going?" And their response was, "Well, we don't have time for them anymore because we have to do our SST meetings, our student study team meetings." And essentially, it's the same thing. You're having the same conversations, but they're having essentially 2 meetings to do the same thing. And so you want to think about how you de-implement or get rid of things that you no longer need or that you no longer want. And so don't just keep layering on top things. As a leadership team, you need to be judicious about what you're going to take off the plate for folks. And a good example of this is I work with a district that replaced their old reading curriculum that wasn't necessarily an evidence-based curriculum. They replaced it with a new reading curriculum. But as you can imagine, many teachers in this district did not want to let go of the old reading curriculum because it's the way that they've done things for years, if not decades. And so what they did was they made sure in the summer when all the teachers were gone, and they told teachers this was going to happen. In the summer, they drove around from building to building, located all the old materials, and they got rid of them because they didn't want people just falling back and doing the old thing. They really wanted to support this new reading curriculum that they were implementing. And so when we think about de-implementing, sometimes we need to be really purposeful about that and think about how we're going to not just like mentally get rid of old things, but also physically get rid of old things. Right. So that's kind of that first piece around just alignment, making sure that you're aligned to do the work. But we also have to build the capacity of our staff and of our leadership team to support our staff. And so the first thing that we need to think of is just building the capacity, building the knowledge capacity, knowing what to do and how to do it. And so you want to think like, what is the current knowledge and understanding of MTSS across the district level staff? So you think about the experience, the expertise, because we can't expect schools to do this work really well if we don't have strong experience and expertise in the district. And so the way that I kind of like to illustrate this is that, you know, there's different layers of support that go into education. And what we're all trying to do, everyone in education, from the teacher level to the state level, we are all in this to support our students and help them be more successful in life. But on the front lines of this interaction is teachers. Teachers see kids every day, they teach them, they deliver instruction, they deliver supports. They're the front line supporting students. And when students aren't successful, who typically gets blamed? Teachers, right? Like we don't necessarily always blame the district, the principal, the state, the region, like we blame teachers. There's tons of like articles you can read about test scores and that teachers aren't doing a good enough job. But someone once told me, and this resonated for me, like students will do well when they can. So when they are set up to be successful, when we have the conditions to be successful, when we support them in the right ways, they will be successful, which I firmly believe. But if we believe that, we also need to recognize that teachers will be successful when they can. And so school leadership, principals and teams support the teachers to be able to do the work that they need to do. But it goes further than that. The district leadership supports the schools to do the work that they need to do. And so when we talk about like MTSS, it happens in this kind of area. It happens in this relationship between students, teachers, and school leadership. It happens in the schools, in the classrooms with students. But how well it happens is dependent on the district. It's dependent on how well the district allocates resources, sets the vision, has clear communication and messaging. We cannot expect our schools to be successful unless our district successfully supports them. And so to illustrate this, you want to think about like how we have to make this consistent. So consider like across your district, like where are all the kids that need students, all the kids that need like intensive intervention. You have however many kids that need some intensive supports. And so this may represent those students. But those students aren't necessarily equally distributed across your schools, right? You have some schools that have more, you have some schools that have less needs. And so there's a little bit of inconsistency. It's not equal across the schools. And so school C here, like they've got a lot more kids in need of intensive intervention, whereas school D doesn't. And so implementation of MTSS and supporting those kids is going to be dependent on the knowledge and skills of the staff at each of those schools. And so if, for example, school D has high knowledge and high skills, then those 3 kids are going to be well served. But if school C doesn't, then those kids are not going to be well served. And it's going to matter which school you go to. We say like kids shouldn't have to win the educational lottery to get a good education. They should have a consistent experience no matter which school they go to in your district. And so all of this is dependent on your district staff knowledge and support to make sure that there is consistent understanding, consistent implementation across all of your schools. And so to do that, we need to build foundational MTSS knowledge among your district staff. So this is internal. You know, all your staff in your district need to have a foundational understanding of MTSS, what it is, what the purpose is, what it looks like. But some people need to have more specialized knowledge so they can coach, right? Like not everyone in your district office and your leadership team needs to understand the intricacies of like what your interventions teach and what a decision rule is and how to progress monitor. But some people do. And so you want to be thinking about who needs more knowledge and who's going to need just an overview. And then how do you build that implementation science knowledge? You know, again, who on your leadership team has this knowledge of how to actually implement things? All right. So you have to build the knowledge within your district team, but we also have to think about how we allocate resources. And when we think about resource allocation, these are the things that we all say always until the end of time, we do not have enough of, right? Money, time, materials, people. Like I rarely go to a school or a district that says like we have enough of any of these things. You could always use more money, more time, more materials, more people. And to some extent, that's very true. Like schools are underfunded. We have a lot on our plates. That's absolutely true. But to some extent, like you have money, time, materials, people, they're just currently being allocated to something else. And so, for example, if you're trying to roll out a new reading intervention, but you don't have the money to buy it, you don't have the time to train people, I would challenge you to say you do have all those things. That money, time is just going to something else in your district. And so we need to prioritize. That's again, going back to that de-implementation. How do we actually prioritize the things that are important and take some things off of our plate? I had a colleague that used to say, schools can do anything that they want. They just can't do everything that they want. And so we need to be very judicious about how we spend our time, how we spend our money, how we allocate our people. Right. Because it comes down to really these 2 questions. You want to build internal capacity around the idea like, A, do your staff know what to do and how to do it? So do they know what tier 1 reading instruction looks like in your district? Do they know what the behavior agreements are and how to teach them in your district? Do they know how to progress monitor and look at data? All of those things. That's an important first step, but it's not enough because you need to answer the question, are staff able to do those things? Because this is where frustration sets in, and we've all been there at this, where like we know what to do, we know how to do it, but I don't have the time to do it. I don't have the people to do it. That gets really frustrating. And so as a leadership team, we are constantly working to build the knowledge and the knowledge of our staff and both at the district and school levels, but we're also constantly trying to allocate resources in a way so staff are going to be able to do the things that they need to do. All right. So we talked about alignment, we talked about internal capacity. The last one I want to talk about, and then we can, get some kind of questions and conversation, is implementation, right? You can align it to, your district. It fits really well. We can build the knowledge and allocate resources, but at the end of the day, like, we have to do it. And this is where it gets messy, is the implementation. And so we think about this idea, like, we want implementation to look like this, where we have our plan for whatever it is, for interventions, for tier 1. We're going to roll it out and it's going to look exactly like we thought it was, and everyone's going to be happy. No one's going to complain, and things are just going to go great. But we all know, like, that never happens, right? What it actually looks like is, like, we have a plan, we do our best intention. Maybe we don't roll it out as cleanly as we want to because we don't have time, because we don't have money, because we made some mistakes. And we get to this place where it's like, yeah, we've got something kind of like what we envisioned, but it's not the same thing. And so I would encourage you to just, like, give yourself grace, give your teachers grace. Like, this is hard work. You're building systems. Teaming is difficult. Like, it's not just a matter of getting one person on board. You got to get a lot of people on board. And so acknowledge it's going to be hard for you, acknowledge it's going to be hard for your staff, and you're just going to continue to work at it over time until we get to where we want to be. And so to think about that, we think about, like, we need training and coaching to do that on an ongoing basis. So thinking about, like, are you providing lots of different training options, both initial and ongoing, through different avenues? You don't want to get into the situation where, and I've seen this a lot, where the only people that know, like, how to teach this curriculum or how to use this assessment, the only people that know that in your district are the people that were there when you first adopted it, because you did one training when you adopted it. You've never kind of come back to that. So you want to make sure that you've got those. You want training that allows people to practice and get feedback, coaching, maybe a plan for scaling up, especially in larger districts. I would encourage you, like, start small. Start with a few schools, start with a few grade levels, scale it up. Go with the willing to start off with. Don't feel like you gotta, what's it called? Don't feel like you have to eat the elephant one bite. Like, do it in small bites. Get feedback, give guidance on how new information fits into existing practice. It's not just enough to say, like, here's a decision rule, but how does that decision rule impact, like, the current interventions that you're giving? How does it actually fit with your progress monitoring measures or your data systems? And I would encourage you to honor the unlearning process. Sometimes we talk about, like, learning is hard, doing new things are hard, and yes, they are. But more difficult sometimes is unlearning. It's letting go of all of these things that we did, maybe for years, maybe for decades, that define who we are as educators. You've got teachers that have been doing something for many, many years that you're coming in and saying, well, now we're going to do it this way. Like, they feel like you're taking a part of them. And it comes back to the idea, like, people don't resist change, they resist loss. If I told you, like, things are going to change, like, you may hesitate, but then if I said the change is I'm going to pay you all $1 million, like, you're not going to resist that. But if I say things are going to change, you're going to take money out of your pockets, like, you can resist that. And so understand that people are losing something. Whenever you're trying to do something new, honor the fact that some people need to go through the stages of grief, right? To, like, let go of, and I joke about it, but, like, we've got teachers, like, they got to let go of the penguin unit, because I've taught the penguin unit for 20 years and you're telling me now I can't do that. Like, that's hard for some folks. So we need to honor that, and be respectful of how they're moving forward. So part of that comes with just having a plan. This is an example plan, and I'll share these slides with you after the presentation so you have them. But, like, map out through the year, like, here's where we're going to train data use, here's where we're going to train interventions, here's where we're going to train progress monitoring, here's who's going to get the training, here's who's going to do the training. Don't be just reactive in your training. You want to be forward thinking, and build a system. Right. So training and coaching, And then the last piece to kind of consider here is this idea of using data to make decisions to change things when they are not working. And so I want to give you just like 15 seconds. I want you to just read that to yourself or read it out loud. So this is from Dan Heath's book. What's it called? I don't. It's his 2020. It's his latest book that he's written. But basically, it's Upstream. It's called Upstream. But basically, it's about like how do we like prevent problems from happening. It's not a book about education, but it kind of applies to it. And the idea is like nothing we do ever goes as well as we hope. And you've all experienced that. Like we roll out something in school and it doesn't always go like we plan. And so rather than try to get like the perfect curriculum, the perfect assessment, the perfect plan, like none of that exists. So you want a pretty good plan, a good curriculum, good products, good teachers, all of those things, but you need a system that has feedback loops so you can make it better over time. You need to look at data in ways to continually increase student outcomes and increase implementation. And so the things you need to think about is within your feedback system, you need some way of gathering data on fidelity of implementation. So what are we doing? And that's fidelity is not a gotcha. It's not like, hey, you're not doing this thing, we're gonna like, punish you for that. It's just like we agreed to do these things. This is our plan. We want to make sure that our plan's working or not working. And so we need to know, are we actually implementing the plan? And then you obviously need student outcome data. So we want to know what are we doing, and then what are the results that we're getting? Because if we're not getting results, we need to try something different. And so then a process to really just put those things together. And so as a kind of wrap here, just kind of some things that can impact implementation and things that leadership teams really need to be aware of and kind of next steps is first and foremost, like we need to know the answer to these questions. We need to know, do staff know what to do and how to do it? Because sometimes like staff are trying really hard, but they don't really clearly understand what it looks like, what it should look like, or what it means. And so they know what to do. Do they know how to do it? Because if they don't, your next step is provide sufficient training and support. If most of your staff isn't doing it real well because they don't know what to do, it's not a staff problem. That's an us problem. We haven't communicated and trained it real well. And then are staff able to do it? So yes, they know how to do it, but they can't do it. And so if that's the case, then we need to look at resources and removing barriers. So maybe they need more time, maybe we need to reallocate people, maybe we need more materials, whatever it is. We want staff to know what to do and be able to do it. But the third thing that sometimes can be even more important that we don't often attend to is that our staff actually motivated to do it. And I don't mean like our staff motivated to teach and to support kids, because staff are always motivated to do that. That's why we get into the business. Um, but the idea like motivated to move towards this, whatever you're rolling out, like different decision rules, different curriculum, different meeting structures. Like if we're having a hard time, like staff know what to do, they're able to do it, but they're just not doing it. We need to better understand why and what are the adaptive challenges that we need to address. So maybe it's because they like the old thing better. Maybe it's because they just not ready to make a change. But we need to understand this is people implementing this, and we need to attend to the human side of things and not just be trying to mandate change, because you can't mandate change. Change is a process that happens with people. I once had a colleague say, like, systems don't change, people do. And so we need to understand changing person by person. That's what builds systems, is this snowball rolling down the hill of people getting on board and doing the best that they can. So, all right. So I know that's a lot to kind of think about and chew on. But at this point, I know we've got a few minutes left, like 5-6 minutes left here. But I just want to open it up to questions, comments. You can come off mute. You can throw them in the chat. Just kind of what resonated for folks, or what questions do y'all have? Yeah.
So in the
So
chat, can you read the
yeah,
questions in the chat?
I
Okay,
can.
fantastic.
Yeah. So Albert, what are some tier two expectations for interventions? And so to that, it depends on the content area, but in general, like um, tier two intervention should be evidence-based programs or practices, something that has some level of evidence that can be implemented and has some success. The one thing I usually caution people or tell people to think about with tier two interventions is you don't need well, I'll back up and say, ideally, you want to create a menu of tier two interventions across your district, right? Like when kids need basic phonics, like these are our phonics interventions. When kids need behavior supports at the middle school level, these are our interventions. So standardized kind of interventions. So we know we're getting some consistency across schools, across classrooms, all those things. But I would caution you that menu does not need to be super large. I see districts that have like for kindergarten and first graders, they have like 10 different phonics and phonemic awareness programs. Like that's a lot. Like that's a lot of money. That's a lot of training. And they're not that different. And so get a simple menu of interventions that are evidence-based. And there's like National Center for Intensive Interventions has a tools chart that kind of evaluates some of the research behind interventions. I would encourage you if you're looking at just like evidence-based practices, the What Works Clearinghouse does these practice guides. Let me see if I can pull up the link here while I'm talking. That really kind of goes into detail of what are the evidence-based. Yeah, here's the link here. I'll put in here. What are the evidence-based practices across a whole host of topic areas like middle school reading interventions, elementary math? Like in the absence of interventions, these are some things that you might want to try. So I'll throw that in there. So what else we got? Where can I get training about MTSS? Yeah. Yeah, so I'm assuming, in Oklahoma, do you all have like statewide training and supports?
We do. Alexa just put in a link, and then I'm getting Benjamin.
Perfect.
It'll be a great resource, and we have a ODSE Connect course on implementation of MTSS that anyone can take in the state.
Perfect.
And we'll put that
Yeah,
link in too.
that's great. Yeah, and I always like encourage people like start locally with like your state before going nationally because there's different terminology that gets used and sometimes it can confuse things. So like start with what you have locally because that's going to fit a little bit better the context of your state and your district. So yeah. Then
Well, thank you so much for coming and educating us more on teaming. It's an important part of MTSS. It's kind of that first thing that if you don't get it right, then it's hard to build your system. So I appreciate you bringing that information to us. I will say that this has been recorded and
all right.
it will be put up on, there will be links put up on the SPDEG Facebook page and also on the course to go along with the chapter on teaming. So thank you again. Everyone else, please join us the last Wednesday of September, same time.
All right. And my email is in there. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. You're looking for resources or anything. Happy to kind of provide anything you need. So
Thank
right.
you all for being here.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Enjoy your evening.